My name is Lyneth Crighton. I work at Brescia House School. I'm a computer applications technology or CAT teacher, and I also run all the staff development for the teachers at our school. Through this presentation, if I'm going too fast or you need to ask something, please just ask in the chat. Bronwyn will help out. Thanks, Bronwyn. Or if you can switch on your mic if you need to say something. Otherwise, please, if you can keep them muted just so the sound doesn't come through. If you are struggling to see some of the content of the slides, the best option in Teams is to change the view to focus on content. And if you're on a device that has a touch screen, you can zoom in. Also, this is recorded, so if you don't want your name to appear in the recording somewhere, please feel free to leave the call and watch the recording. I will load the recording on the website and I will tell you where all the resources are as we go through. So, sorry, I just need to find the right screen. So, 21st Century Learning Design is based on Microsoft's framework. It is a course that you can find on the Microsoft Learn platform, and you can take that course a step further and write a global Microsoft Certified Educator exam. And through the kind sponsorship of Microsoft, we have sponsored vouchers that allows teachers from African countries to write the exam free of charge over the next couple of weeks on or before the 18th of July. I will explain the process of booking and writing the exam via Certiport at the end of the content of the presentation. But in the meantime, you can do the course. If we could have some kind, I've lost my chat, found my chat window. If you could just let me know with a thumbs up in the by using a React if you've done the learning pathway of 21st Century Learning Design on Microsoft Learn. If you've done it already, thumbs up. If you haven't done it, please can you just give me a heart just so I know when I'm talking if some people have or haven't done it already. Okay, so there's some people who have and some people who haven't. So it doesn't matter whether you have or you haven't, but because I'm going to explain it all, it either will be reinforcing what you've learned or it will be new to you. What I can recommend is if you write the exam, that you go through the learning pathway on Microsoft Learn. So for those people who don't know, Microsoft Learn is learn.microsoft.com. It is the Microsoft's online learning platform, and it has a whole set of different trainings, but it is not specifically and only for teachers. So there are skills for technicians, for back end, and for teachers in here and courses. So you can log on. You need to create a profile, and then it tracks the courses you've done. So to find Microsoft 21st Century Learning Design, the best way is I type 21 century and in the search, so I know it's quite small, but next to where my picture is, if you don't have a picture in your Microsoft account, you might just have your initials. We're looking for the one that says Training Paths, 21st Century Learning Design, and you click on it. And if it's green in the top right-hand corner with the experience points, it means you have completed it. At the end of the session, I am going to give you a code which will unlock that and say you have completed the course, because we'll have gone through everything. But if, as I said earlier, if you are using it to sorry, it looked like I disconnected for a minute, so I hope I'm back. So when you get the code, if you don't have a Learn account already, just write it down and create an account. And then you go to your profile, which would be your icon of initials or image. Click on profile, go to achievements, and then at the top here, it says redeem your code now. And when you click on it, there's a place to type in the code. And then you click redeem, and then it will, under learning pathways, it will give you this 21st century learning trophy. Sorry, I did mine a while ago. And there it is. And it will also give you all the badges for the individual modules, which is here. So if you go back to the module, to the actual course, for those who haven't been on Learn before, if you scroll down to the bottom, it has the modules. As you can see, each one has its own badge. If you clicked overview, you could see the headings. Each page, as you read it, gets a green tick. And at the end of a module, there's a knowledge check. So the first thing is, this multiple choice is not like what is in the exam. And as we go through the course, I'm going to give you examples of what kind of questions you get in the exam. These are more to confirm that you have read the information in this specific module. There are always only 5 of them, and they are always multiple choice. You check your answers at the end, and then you complete the module and earn the badge if you were just doing it by yourself. And all courses on Learn work that way. So this website, so thank you, Bronwyn, for the knowledge check link and the link for the actual course. This website is the website that I run, and many of you will be familiar with it. If you go to Growth Hub, there is the information for Microsoft Certified Educator, and there is an overview of the Microsoft Certified Educator exam at the beginning from Certiport. Please, it is not an exam that is directly related to a specific package of Microsoft. It is related to pedagogy and the principles of 21st century learning. So none of the questions say which icon or which tool do you use in, for example, Word. How do you do not have to do anything specific like that. That is what Microsoft Office specialist exams are for. This one is built on the principles of 21st century learning. On the website, if you clicked on this button, you would get to the pathway and learn. There is the data sheet of what is covered in the exam, and there is a link to the Certiport website, which, should you write the exam, you will need, and I'll explain further what you need to do on Certiport, how you follow the exams from home. And then further down, these are the resources that I've created when I've done the workshop with the teachers at Brescia and online for the last year or two. They help me remember. They kind of infographics that you can download them on this website. You can also download a PDF version of just the rubrics and the decision trees that will be easy to print. At the bottom are the videos. You can see when I presented this on the 10th of June, I've loaded the video, how to write the exams from the 7th of June. If you write the exam, I suggest this video is very good. He does it from within the practice exams, so he shows you a lot more of the actual exam taking process that I'm going to show you today, but I will explain it not from the actual video of the exams. So, and there's a few other resources that you can find on this website. So Microsoft, as I said, it's based on 21st century learning design pathway with the ability to write this exam. So just so we understand where the framework comes from, this video plus the others that I'm going to show tonight does come from the 21st century learning course, and you can find them all there and more on learn.microsoft.com. So please just let me know if you don't hear the sound.
21CLD was developed after Microsoft and other employers realized that some members of their workforce didn't possess the requisite skills to thrive in their chosen occupation. Microsoft commissioned a study through the Stanford Research Institute to examine what skills our learners need to succeed in the workplace and how are we measuring those skills in our schools. The researchers studied schools in 7 countries, analyzing lesson plans and learners' work, interviewing learners and educators and administrators to find out what skills are we teaching and how are these skills being taught? What skills do our learners need to be prepared for the workforce? And are we teaching those skills? The research group identified 6 important 21st century skills or learning dimensions: knowledge construction, collaboration, real-world problem solving, skilled communication, self-regulation, and ICT for learning. They discovered that although educators were addressing some of these skills in their learning activities, it was often only at a superficial level. For example, while educators were introducing the skill of collaboration, they were not requiring learners to practice the skill in a way that would ensure their future success. Researchers also asked, what do successful schools have in common? They found that educators in the most successful schools were collaborating with their colleagues to design cross-curricular or interdisciplinary lessons. The research team then developed rubrics to help educators better understand 21CLD curricular goals and redesign learning to develop the vital skills our learners need. These rubrics have been tested internationally and proven to facilitate collegial discussion on lesson design as well as promote reflective practice among educators.
Okay, so as Becky explains, it's based on 6 learning dimensions, and there are 6 rubrics. Here they are on the screen. They are very small at the moment, but we're going to go through each dimension, each rubric, and we're going to look at the kind of questions they ask in the exam. This is the preferred one to look at, the one with the actual words where the bold and the capital letters do have an impact on what you are reading. So we're going to start with knowledge construction. So knowledge construction for those teachers who teach grade 10, 11, and 12 FET or know Bloom's is the top higher order of Bloom's. It is the development of critical thinking skills. It's about synthesizing, analyzing, and creating and evaluating information. So why is it important? Well, because if you look at the two pictures, that in the 1800s, the 1900s, the beginning of this century, our classrooms still look the same, but that's not what the world of work and the world out there looks like. If you think back 18 months, nobody knew what generative AI is, and now lots of people talk about using it daily. So we need to get the students to move past memorizing facts. So, for example, when I was at school, there was a planet that's no longer a planet, and they have to rather develop critical thinking and reasoning skills because we don't know where we're going at the end of the day. So I was talking to my matrics the other day, and I was saying, well, 18 months ago there was no chat GPT. The end of 2022 it was started, but imagine that most of them are 17, 18. So let's say they only have to retire when they're 68. That's 50 years from now. That's 2074. Also think about the fact that we're almost closer to 2050 than we are to the year 2000. So this is why we have to change. And for me, this is one of the most important dimensions. It's the one I like the most. It's because we have to think about doing things differently and not just think about facts, but what we can do with the facts to make a more of an impact, and the skills we can give the learners in our class.
The first dimension we will be exploring together is knowledge construction. When evaluating how I might enhance a learning activity, I like to begin with knowledge construction because it's important to me to look for new ways to deepen my learners' understanding of core curriculum concepts. Sometimes I slip into asking my learners to answer lower level questions like what is, who is, and how much. Typically, these questions have only one right answer, which is easily found with a quick web search. We need to prepare our learners to do more than regurgitate what they've read or heard. Instead, our learners should use information they find to construct their own understandings and engage in purposeful knowledge construction. The knowledge construction dimension strives to engage learners in activities that force them to generate ideas and understandings that are new to them. Learners do this through higher level thinking skills like interpretation, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. A primary goal of this dimension is for knowledge construction to be the main requirement of the learning activity, meaning it is the part of the learning activity that learners should spend most of their time on, and the part educators focus on when assessing understanding. At a deeper level, learners will apply their knowledge in a new context. Requiring learners to use their constructed knowledge in a new way furthers their understanding of core principles because they must abstract what they've learned and examine it from a new perspective. At its deepest level, knowledge construction activities should be interdisciplinary, requiring learners to make connections across and between multiple disciplines. By engaging our learners in this way, we will be better preparing them to construct knowledge individually and collaboratively, to make meaning and develop deep understandings of this dynamic world in which we live. Next, dig deeper into this dimension with me as we examine the rubric to code for knowledge construction.
So this is the first of my infographics. So I've created all of them around a theme and a color. So knowledge construction, because of the word construction, I think of building and the yellow hard hat. And we basically building knowledge in our learners. So there are big ideas in what Becky said, and the main ideas, which means that you need to understand for the rubric. So the rubric, or I've represented here as a bunch of speech bubbles because it's in essence questions you ask yourself. So the first question is, it requires knowledge construction. And if you said no, you would stay on level 1. And if you said yes, you would go and ask the second question, which is it a main requirement? So knowledge construction is a task that requires learners to interpret, analyze, synthesize, or evaluate information or ideas. In other words, it's the top set of blooms. It is also the main requirement, which means it's the most time, the most effort, and usually the most marks of your project. And if those two answers are correct, we ask the third. It means it's a level 3 question on the rubric. And you ask the level 3 question was, do they apply knowledge in a new context? So learners must abstract what they've learned and look at it from a different perspective to apply it in a different situation. And then lastly, the question that is asked last is it interdisciplinary? In other words, does it take information, ideas, content, methods from different academic subjects? So in our school, the first year people arrived to teach at Brescia in this time of year. Every new teacher does the Microsoft Certified Educator course and exam. It is part, if you're planning or do apply to be a Microsoft Innovative Educator, it is one of the pathways you have to do. But because this changes the conversation about how we do our projects in a school. So we, in term 3 of grade 9, run some of the term, what we call 21 CLD projects. And to explain knowledge construction, I will tell you about one of our projects at the end of last year. So the project was a collaboration between history and art and English. And in art and history, they had learned about protests, protest art, what makes a good sign, what makes the colors that advance information in a sign, what kind of fonts and text you use. And then they did all that content. And then they were given as groups topics around history, concepts, for example, fees must fall. And they had to create protest posters around whatever their topic is, having learned South African protest history and some of the other protests across the world. So that made it interdisciplinary. The part that made it obviously a main knowledge construction was, yes, it was the most time, effort, and mark. And what was the knowledge in the new context? Well, they had to take what they knew about protest action, protests, and how people across the world in different situations did peaceful and non-peaceful protests. And then they had to create the artwork to protest the area that they were representing. So now it was in a new context because they weren't just filling in the worksheet or creating a PowerPoint from the information that they already knew. So this is what the rubric, as Microsoft refers to, looks like, the Word version. It starts at the top, level 1. It tells you that the learning area activity does not require learners to construct knowledge. It can be completed by, complete the activity by reproducing information or using familiar, whoa, just give up. Sorry, procedures they are used to. And then it goes on each level. So as you, in the exam, a lot of the time you get the rubric. In the questions I'm going to give you, they are not on the same screen, but I suggest you print out the rubrics and if you laminate them, you can make them on a keyring, which means when you're working through them, you can flip through the big ideas or the main infographic with Microsoft's rubrics on behind. So this is how it gets asked in the exam. Please note these are adapted and part questions from the exams, because when you write an exam, you do sign a non-disclosure agreement. So in case your font is very small on your screen, I'm just going to read it, not word for word, but I'll let you know the main points. So your students are learning about the water cycle, and usually you've given them notes and diagrams, but you want to create a 21st century project in which they apply their knowledge in a new context. So the options to choose from are, and remembering that applying knowledge in a new context is a level 4, or obviously 5 if it was interdisciplinary. So the students use Minecraft to recreate the water cycle. They draw a diagram in PowerPoint to show the water cycle. They interview a local expert in water systems, and they create an interactive presentation showing how water cycles through the environment. So the Minecraft and the PowerPoint, when you reading in the exam, don't be misled by using the fancy tools or Microsoft products, because at this point we're looking for a new context. So reproducing what you've taught them in the same way is not a new context, even though Minecraft might be an exciting way to recreate the water cycle. They are still just taking no difference to drawing a diagram in PowerPoint, no difference to drawing them on a piece of paper or in a worksheet. The two that show promise are interview a local expert in water systems or create an interactive presentation showing how water cycles through the environment. Now, both of those, in order to know if it was level 4 in my books, is that you would need to see the questions that the student asked of the expert, because it might have nothing to do with water cycles, just because they are water system. So in other words, it could potentially be 1, because it would show you've got to understand the water cycle in order to ask relevant questions. And the last one, if the water was cycling through the environment for example, you ask them how it cycles through the environment in their own garden, when you've only explained, for example, the sea in the Cape and the water coming and the mountains of Table Mountain helping with the cloud formation. There again, you also now have to look at it, well, how does it work in my garden? How does it work by my school? That is what we mean by a new context. Is everybody with me so far? Thumbs up. Okay. So another question is that they are in social science, but they've read about ancient Egypt and they're going to be tested on key events and information. Which one of the scenarios transforms the learning activity to one that involves knowledge construction? So in other words, which one is knowledge construction and which ones are not? So the teacher uses AR in the lessons. Students use an app to point out the image of something in ancient Egypt to learn more about it. So thumbs up if you think that is one, and go use the wow surprised icon if you don't think that that is an example of knowledge construction. So if it's knowledge construction, put a thumbs up. If it's not knowledge construction, yes. Okay. So it wouldn't be, in my books, knowledge construction, because they are just looking for information. They are not applying it. And you'll see now when I read the second one, students conduct research into ancient Egypt and use the research to write a dialogue for a play, which will be recorded. Do you think that's knowledge construction? Thumbs up. And the surprised wow face if it's not. Yes, it is. So you see the difference. That just because the technology's there, it was more about the fact that they researched Egypt and they wrote a dialogue for a play. The fact that the play is recorded is neither here nor there. Then the last one, a teacher shows how to create a timeline and then asks the students to create a timeline using Excel. Do you think that's knowledge construction? Thumbs up, or the wow face if it's not? Okay, yes, it's all they're doing is representing something you've taught them, something that they could get in a book. So that's the kind of questions they ask. It's often easier to read the choices first, because then you know what you're looking for. There is lots of reading in the exam. So you have to read for looking for the answers rather than reading everything, and not, yes, in this case, I'm filling in or asking questions about extra content, but try and read only what is on the in the question, and not like second guess it. It's what it is at face value. So they also have a decision tree. If you, that kind of a person who prefers a graphical representation of the questions at the top, does it require knowledge construction? Yes, and you go to the next question on the right. And if it says no, you fall out at the bottom. Knowledge construction has a 5-level rubric. Not all of them have 5-level rubrics. So the next dimension and rubric is called collaboration. It's about learners working together. And why is it important? Well, because there are very few jobs or situations in the world that people can be only by themselves. Most jobs and situations requires working in a team, and nowadays that team is a global team, not just people that sit in the office with you.
The next dimension we will examine is collaboration. Of all the dimensions, I personally feel collaboration is the most challenging to incorporate in my lesson design, but the most rewarding when it's done right. Let me explain. The lowest level of collaboration is the common practice of learners working in pairs or groups. But simply giving learners a task to complete together does not always mean they will truly collaborate. On more than one occasion, I have seen one child complete all the work that was meant for a larger group. For effective collaboration, learners must share responsibility to develop a common product, design, or response. In other words, they must craft something together. However, there might be cases in which one learner dominates the team and dictates what the group will produce. So, it is important to ensure that learners work together to make substantive decisions that shape the content, process, or product they will submit. Then learners develop the skills to work respectfully and make compromises in the interests of a common goal. At its deepest level, collaboration requires learners to work interdependently. In other words, we must design the learning activity in such a way that each learner's contribution is easily distinguished from the others. At the end of a project, my learners should be able to say, if I hadn't contributed this part, our team would not have achieved its goal. The outcome of a collaborative learning activity is always richer when it's designed to incorporate interdependence, and our learners gain valuable skills in the process. Few jobs today are done in isolation, And if we want our learners to be prepared for the workforce, we need to teach them the indispensable skill of working well with others. The 21 CLD Collaboration Dimension is a wonderful guide to help us teach these skills. Next.
So this is the infographic with the big ideas of collaboration. I always think of it as the dolphins because they work together to achieve a goal. So the first question is, is the work done in pairs or groups? If the answer is no, it's a level 1. If the answer is yes, then we ask, is it shared responsibility? So they must work together in pairs or groups to discuss an issue, solve a problem, create a product, but they must collectively own the work and be mutually responsible for its outcome. So in other words, there's one product that they all work on together, and they have to have shared responsibility in achieving that outcome. Then, if that is yes, we have to ask, have they made substantive decisions that shape the content, process, or products of learners' work? And lastly, the highest level on the rubric is the work interdependent? In other words, all learners must participate for the team to succeed, but there must be individual and group accountability. So, for example, if you are requiring your learners to work together to create a PowerPoint presentation, yes, you have shared responsibility, as in there's one PowerPoint presentation. Yes, you could say that there are substantive decisions that they have to work together on process and content and which slide is which. But if you are not marking or looking for who did what and could be held individually accountable in that PowerPoint, it would fall short of a level 5. So it's the kind of thing where, yes, you have a PowerPoint, but one person is responsible for the layout and graphics and colors and fonts. And in the rubric, you make allowance for a portion that is the group mark and a portion that is the child's individual mark, and together they become the project mark. You can use individuals as peer assessment, as feedback I've seen it done where students decide if their mark was 80%, who gets what percentage of 80, as in who did the most work. A lot of that is to stop one person going and doing that project. And we've all been there, had the children in our class or been the children in the class where we have done, one person's done all the work. So the Microsoft collaboration rubric looks like this. So the big ideas or the important words are bold, and then obviously the do's and do nots. So for example, a level 4 learners do have shared responsibility, and they do make substantive decisions about the content, but their work is not interdependent. So the next one is a question where you have to decide if the activities below, what would make it a level 5. So the teams are assigned roles to the team members. The students, sorry, are assigned roles to the team members based on the list of roles provided by the teacher. The students work as a team to come up with one logo for their final product. They work interdependently on the logo, slogan, and advertisement, but they discuss progress as a group, or they meet deadlines from the 6s and 7s company. So if we look back at level 5, they've got to have shared responsibility, substantive decisions, and their work is interdependent. So which one of those, if you could just type in the chat A, B, C, or D, which one do you think is the part that makes it a level 5? Which one of those criteria or points about the task would make it a level 5? Anybody want to suggest? So remember, 5 is shared responsibility, substantive decisions on content, process, or product, and their work is interdependent. So yes, C is the answer. It kind of gives it away because it tells you the work is interdependent on the logo, slogan, and the advertisement, but they discuss the progress as a group. So the second question is, using the rubric for collaboration, identify each of the level of these activities. So the students engage in a whole class discussion about the environmental issues in their community, and all students must participate. So if we look at the decision tree, the first question is, learners required to work in pairs or groups. Thumbs up if that's a yes or a no. Thumbs up if it's yes, and wow or surprised if it's no. In other words, are we going to ask the next question? So just so we can remember, they engage in a whole class discussion about the environmental issues in their community. All students must participate. Tracy, is your hand up to ask a question or as a thumbs up? It's okay. So they're not working in a group or a pair. So if we looked at the decision tree, the answer would be no. So it's level 1 on the collaboration rubric. The second one is, students decide to use Office 365 to share files for a research project on environmental issues. Students make assignments to first collect and graph data, and then incorporate the data into a written report. Finally, students work as a team to create a sway to summarize the results. So thumbs up if you think that is what level that is. So let's look there. So thumbs up if you think the first question, we're going to go yes. If they have to go yes, so required to work in groups or pairs, is that a yes or a no? Thumbs up or surprise? Okay, yes. So second question is, do they have shared responsibility? They work together to collect data and graph it. They create a sway to summarize results. Do you think they have shared responsibility? Thumbs up for yes. And surprise for no. Yep. Okay, do they make substantive decisions? Yes, thumbs up. Surprise is no. So we're still answering yes. They do make decisions because they're graphing data and they're summarizing data. And lastly, is the work interdependent? Yes or no? Okay, so the people who said yes, can you see in there how you would individually know from what they've told you who did what? Remember, there needs to be individual accountability. Or is it that, yes, it fulfills right up to level 4, but there is no interdependent work because from the information we're given, it keeps talking about students make assignments, students share files, students summarize and create a sway. So does everybody understand why for me, that would be no and only a level 4. Okay, so the next learning dimension is real world problem solving. After knowledge construction, this is my next favorite. And though we often add the context of real world, and we talk about poverty and water supply and education, all those sustainable development goals, we often forget about the problem solving, which makes projects have a unique answer for every child or every group that works on it. So in our global based economy, we actually have to have people who are going to work on ideas to create and solve some of the problems, for example, global warming that affects our planet. And obviously, the collaboration and teamwork and knowledge construction are important, but the world is going to require people who can problem solve and think innovatively.
Now, let's examine the real-world problem-solving dimension. This dimension is extremely popular with learners because it gives purpose to their learning and they experience the relevance of the curriculum they are learning. Authenticity is one of my favorite educational strategies. The first component of the dimension examines whether learners' work involves problem solving. Problem solving happens when learners develop a solution to a problem that is new to them, complete a task that they have not been told how to complete, or design a complex product that meets a set of requirements. To qualify as problem solving, it must be the main component of the learning activity. The learning experience is deeper when learners solve real-world problems. Real-world problems are authentic situations and needs that exist outside of an academic context. Real-world problems have the following characteristics. They are experienced by real people. They have solutions for a specific, plausible audience other than the educator as a grader. They have specific, explicit contexts. And they use actual data if data is needed to solve the problem. At its deepest level, the learning activity involves innovation. Innovation requires putting learners' ideas or solutions into practice in the real world. Innovation also benefits people other than the learner. In other words, the product we task learners to create must have value beyond meeting the requirements of an assignment. Solutions to the most pressing problems in our society will not be found in textbooks. Instead, society needs problem solvers who can confront hard problems in creative and innovative ways and do so as part of a multidisciplinary team. As educators, it is crucial that we design learning activities that help our learners to develop the skills they need to engage in problem solving and become innovative thinkers. Next.
So here are the big ideas of real world problem solving. It has to contain the main requirement, which remember is the most time, effort, and marks, has to be problem solving, which means they have a challenge to develop a solution or complete a task without instructions or design a complex product. Then we ask if it's real world, as in, is their authentic situation experienced by real people with, we have a specific audience in mind, they have specific context or use actual data. And lastly, does it require the students to put their ideas or solutions into practice? Is it innovative? So this is what the rubric looks like. And here is an example. So basically we have to decide whether it's level 1, 2, or 3 from the text that they give us. And remembering that level 1 is that we're looking for problem solving. Level 2 is that it is problem solving and real world. Level 3 is level 2 is problem solving but not real world. Level 3 is problem solving and real world, but there's no innovation. And the last level 4, and as you can see, this is a 4-level rubric, is that they require innovation. So the story goes, or case study, is that city officials in your community announced that the local recycling program needs to be overhauled due to the cost of improper waste disposal rising. So there's a lot of confusion about recycling. So you assign your geography class the task of developing a marketing strategy that promotes the new program. Students must create advertising materials that the city can use to educate citizens on how to recycle. The teacher will mark the advertising materials. So if we look at the rubric, is there problem solving? Thumbs up. Do you think there's problem solving? Or surprised if there's not? So there's a problem solving to the fact that you could say, well, there's a problem because the waste people don't know how to recycle correctly. So if we say, okay, it's not a level 1, level 2 means it is problem solving, but it's not a real world problem. Well, uh, thumbs up if we agree that it is a real world problem, recycling and learning how to recycle correctly. And then the next question we're asking is, does it require innovation? So do you think that there's innovation? Thumbs up. And if not, wow, surprise. So I would agree with you. There is no innovation when the fact that the teacher has told you that it's a marketing and the marketing strategy is the answer. So I would have said that that was a level 3 because they don't have to put implement their ideas in the real world or give their ideas to somebody outside the academic context who could implement them. And in that question, they talk about only the teacher will mark it. So if they were handing them and it was a school-based competition that the headmaster was judging, or it was going to city council, that would change it to the next level. So then in each of these options, is it a level 4, which remember is the top? So it's got to have an audience and be innovation and have almost be implemented. So they user experience and they modify their interface of their web app. And if they follow instructions, use make code, block-based programming, and write a program that identifies that an object is in motion. So do we agree that B is not innovation or a real life audience or even a real world problem? The section A, we don't know what the app is for. We could just say that maybe it could be a level 4 because there is actually users of the interface of their web app and it's actually being applied in the real world. We would obviously need to know more information. Is everybody with me still? Everybody's still there. Yep. Okay. So the next, that's what the decisions tree looks like. And the next dimension and rubric is skilled communication, which is about demonstrating your learning as a student. And obviously that's very important because it goes hand in hand with collaboration. And without being able to articulate what and be able to give our ideas in situations we're not going to be able to have them implemented. And of course, there's lots of technologies that support communication as well as collaboration.
The next dimension we will be exploring is skilled communication. Communication is the core of human interaction. We are constantly communicating, and we rely on communication to share our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. Communication also deepens learning. Albert Einstein once said that only when we understand something deeply are we able to explain it simply. The skilled communication dimension focuses on the types of communication needed to further this level of understanding. To code as skilled communication, the communication activity must be extended or multimodal. Extended communication is when learners communicate a set of connected ideas rather than just a single thought. Multimodal communication includes more than one type of communication mode or tool. The different elements must work together to produce a stronger message than any one element alone. At a deeper level, learners' communication must state a claim, hypothesis, or conclusion, and then support that thesis with facts or examples. At its deepest level, learners must design their communication for a particular audience. When communicating to a specific audience, learners must select the tools, content, or style with that audience in mind. It is important for learners to be able to communicate clearly and persuasively on a variety of subjects and to different types of audiences. Developing technologies in the 21st century have created new opportunities for communication. And with the proliferation of digital and print media, the need for effective communication is no longer confined to language arts classes. With practice, learners become effective, skilled communicators and contributing members to society. Now, let's dig.
So the big ideas, I always think about breaking news, and the news channels are on the TV. They generally are connected ideas, so it's extended communication, or it's multimodal in the fact that they use more than one mode of or tool of communication. In other words, they might be talking plus have images. If you think of TVs, they have ticker tapes plus images, videos, plus the person telling you the news. Then the next idea is evidence. Now, this is quite a strange rubric in the fact that the first question is that it could be extended or multimodal. And then if one of those apply, yes, we look for supporting evidence. In other words, are they explaining their ideas or supporting their thesis or hypothesis with facts and examples? If you said no, you can still get to level 3, but if what they've done is for a specific audience. If they've said yes, there's supporting evidence, you then ask is it a particular audience? And if it is, it becomes a level 4. So in other words, are the tools and the message and the communication appropriate to a specific audience? So for example, if you are presenting to a grade 2 class, your speech versus a class of matrics, it would be what you choose and the message you give and the tools you use would be different. If that is part of your project, it's what answers the question about specific audience. So the rubric, as you can see from Microsoft with Words, has an or by level 3. In other words, there are 2 ways to achieve a level 3. And then obviously the level 4 has to have supporting evidence plus particular audience plus multimodal or extended communication. So it's quite small on your screen, this question, but actually A, B, C and D are just level 1, 2, 3, and 4, because it's a 4-level rubric written out in a sentence. So actually what they're asking you is to decide whether this task is what level it fits in under skilled communication. So it is a lesson for geography about settlement areas and urban, rural, and suburban. They're going to use a PowerPoint, and the activity has the following characteristics. They work in small groups to find photographs representing urban, rural, and suburban settlement areas. They write a paragraph defining the similarities and differences they see in the photographs. They work in their groups to explain how the photographs and paragraphs support the definitions. And then lastly, they use MS Photos to create a video explaining the different settlement areas to younger learners. And then lastly, they can narrate or use digital inking and add music to their video. So if you think of the skilled communication rubric, it is multimodal because they are creating a video and they can narrate it or use music and inking. There is supporting evidence because they have found photographs and written paragraphs to say why they explain it the way they do. And lastly, to make a level 4, they have to have design it for a particular audience, and the activity is for they explain it to younger learners. So as you could, do you agree with me? It's a level 4. So the next one is you are deciding if these are make it a level 4. So the students are putting in your art class, they displaying their paintings at the end of the term. So would either of these things make it a level 4, that they must stand and be available, stand next to their painting and answer questions? Or if you put them on a website to sell their artwork and proceeds of the auction are donated to charity. As you can see, the proceeds being donated has nothing to do with the skilled communication. But does anybody, thumbs up if you think either of those are a yes, and surprise if you think they're both no's. Okay, so remember, level 4 is a specific argument, a specific audience. So none of them talk about an audience. On the website, it doesn't tell you who's going to look at the pictures. And though they might be able to answer questions from attendees, they don't really say who the attendees are. So that's the top question. The second question is, where is the evidence of the work? So for me, they fail on both of those accounts. In those instructions, they don't tell you anything about evidence. In other words, where did their idea for their painting come from? And who are they displaying it to? So as you can see, the decision tree looks slightly different because we can get to level 3 in 2 different directions. But the crux is whether there's supporting evidence to get to level 4. So the next rubric and learning dimension is self-regulation, which reminds me of the rules of the road and robots and pedestrian lights, because we need to know how we're going to work in collaboration in order to succeed, because at the end of the day, there's no teachers in the workplace who make us keep on task. We're going to have to teach our students skills so that they learn how to work through what they need to keep on task, create plans, work to make things better.
The next dimension we will be exploring is self-regulation. At the deepest levels of the dimensions we have studied so far, learners are required to create products or presentations that take time to develop. The self-regulation dimension helps learners by developing the skills necessary to plan their work, design products and solutions, accept feedback, and engage in a process of improvement both individually and as part of a group. Self-regulation is part of executive function, which Harvard University defines as a set of skills critical to the success of every learner. For a learning activity to meet self-regulation requirements, learners must spend a substantive amount of time on their work over time while considering the learning criteria. Planning their own work may involve deciding how they will complete the tasks, when they will complete each step, who will complete each part of the work, and where it will be done, such as home or school. At the deepest level of this dimension, learners must receive effective feedback that tells them precisely what they are doing well and offers specific guidance directly connected to the learning goals and success criteria. Learners must also revise their work based on that feedback to improve it before it is finalized. This revision process helps the learning process by promoting reflection with the receipt of feedback and planning via specific guidance on next steps. Today's workforce requires self-regulated thinkers with high levels of executive function. Employees who can take responsibility for their lives, work, and learning will be more marketable and able to thrive in a competitive job economy. These skills do not always come naturally, and it is therefore our job as educators to prepare our learners with a variety of activities to develop this all-important skill. So, let's dive.
So the big ideas. So it has to be a long-term activity with learning goals. In other words, it needs to take more than a lesson, and you have to define what is to be learned and the success criteria. So the marking rubric needs to be given so that the learners know what they need to meet the goals. Then, and that would give you, if you answer yes, it would come to a level 2. If it wasn't long term or it didn't have learning goals, it would only be a level 1. Then they have to plan who, how, when, where, and they have to talk about a schedule, to make decisions about the steps that they're going to follow. And then lastly, part of the project process must be that there is feedback given, and then the students have a chance to revise their work before it's finally submitted. I know as a CAT teacher, we have that built into our PATs. And of course, it doesn't always have to be marked by the teacher, because if you have learning goals, it could be a peer or somebody else who could just check to the marking rubric that you have done everything, but give you feedback and the chance to revise the answers or revise your project to meet those suggestions. So it's also a 4-level rubric. And the kind of questions you would get is, for example, they were drag and drop words. So what would you say? Who provides the feedback? Well, the students or teachers, and the feedback is used to revise the answer. Another one is 2 statements which demonstrate self-regulation skills. So does anybody think that students are skilled in the software that are needed for the project? Thumbs up if you think that's a part of self-regulation. Otherwise, you can laugh or give the surprised reaction. Students, yep, that is not a part of self-regulation. Second one, students break down the task into smaller subtasks and determine how to divide the work. Would you say Yes, that is part, thumbs up, or no. Yep. Then students contain feedback and make revisions. Thumbs up if that's true, as part of regulations, or surprise if it's not. Then students are part of the target group for an advertising campaign. Is that part of self-regulation? Yep. Nope, it's not. And then students work in teams comprised of marketing and graphic design students. So if I was doing the test online, I would have stopped reading as soon as I found the second one, which was statement 3. You didn't need to read the rest because we already had to. It just saves time in reading. So that's what the decision tree looks like. And then we move on to the last dimension, which for me is the underpinning dimension because it actually affects all of them. It's the dimension about the use of technology. And why? Because it's here and everybody and in everything we do. And with AI, it's now even more so than before.
The last dimension we will examine is ICT for learning. ICT encompasses a powerful range of digital tools, both hardware and software, that promotes and supports all the other 21 CLD dimensions. The ICT for learning dimension focuses on how ICT impacts and enhances learning. To code as ICT for learning, learners must have the opportunity to use ICT to complete all or part of the learning activity. At a deeper level, learners' use of ICT must support their knowledge construction. As I shared in a previous video, knowledge construction occurs when learners use interpretation, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation to generate new understandings and ideas. When the knowledge construction activities would be impossible or impractical to complete without the use of ICT, the learning becomes even deeper. At the deepest level, learners are designers of ICT products for others to use. During the design process, learners must attend to the needs and preferences of their intended audience. Through these activities, we will be training our learners to be analytical thinkers, as well as creators of information and ideas, thanks to the wide array of digital tools available to them. ICT makes it possible for us to engage our learners in new and innovative ways as never before. ICT also allows learners to connect with a wider network of peers and experts. This is invaluable because only when we engage with others do we truly begin to understand ourselves and the world we live in. So, let's dive deeper.
So the main ideas for the use of ICT for learning, one is the ICT that they can or are required to use, and then does it support knowledge construction? And we remember that knowledge construction is interpret, analyze, synthesize, or evaluate information or ideas. Then we ask if it would be impractical, impossible without the use of ICT to construct that new knowledge. And then lastly, are they designing a product, an ICT product that can support their real world problem solving and innovation? So our art teacher does a project, and it's not really a design of an ICT product because they actually create a lino cuts, but they take pictures and then they use the tools in formatting of Word to change the shadows and change it to line in order to create the image that they then cut onto lino cut. And without the tool of Word and the ability to change an image and change its contrast and change it to line, that task would not be possible. And obviously the ability to change those things cements and requires them to create knowledge in a different context, which is where, because now they're applying shadow and contrast in a ICT tool in a different environment to just what they learned in art. So that is an example. It would only get to a level 4 and not a level 5, because this is a 5 level rubric. So as you can see, there are 5 levels, and an example of a question. So there was level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and there are 5 projects. It doesn't mean there were actually one level for each. It doesn't mean one is one. It means that you could assign whichever level to each activity. So the activity to work with a partner and write a program using make code block-based programming for primary school maths. So yes, it is requires ICT. Yes, does it support knowledge construction? Because now they're using the maker block code to create a programming for and ultimately they created a product for authentic learners, being the primary math students. So that would be a level 5. If you take notes in OneNote notebooks, yes, it is knowledge construction, because taking notes helps you construct knowledge, but it's not required. You could have taken notes in the even on a piece of paper, and which is why it would only be a level 3, because it does support knowledge construction, but they could have got the same knowledge without using ICT. If they follow steps to practice loops, yes, they could use to practice skills or reproduce information, but they're not constructing knowledge. So that's a level 2. Students watch a video explaining sorry, I'll answer the question now. Students watch an instructional video explaining how programmers solve problems. Well, yes, there's a video, but they just use it to learn. They're not using it to create knowledge. And lastly, which would be level 2, and lastly, they investigate loops by debugging code. So obviously it would support knowledge construction and they would require it, but it is not a producing authentic design. So that is what the decision tree looks like. And just to say that when you do projects, and even in our school where we've been doing projects for a while, 21 CLD being the focus, you cannot make every rubric reach the highest level. The idea is that over a period of time, you work on different skills, and obviously different types of projects lend themselves, and different content lend themselves to what can be asked or assessed, or which rubric we would use.
We made it! You've come so far, and we've learned so much together. Together with our showcase educators from around the world, we've discovered how research-based principles are put into practice and how lives are changed through the dimensions of 21st century learning. I'm proud of you for preparing our learners for life in the 21st century. 21 CLD helps us incorporate a range of skills into our learning activities, in addition to core subject matter knowledge, so our young people will know how to apply their core knowledge in real-world situations. As I briefly recap each dimension, I encourage you to think about your own learners and how each dimension applies to them. Because your learners in your area of the world have varying needs, consider your demographic before you begin. Then, together, we can design learning opportunities to address those needs. When considering knowledge construction, we need to ask ourselves, will my learners be required to construct and apply knowledge? And will that knowledge be interdisciplinary? When considering collaboration, will my learners share responsibility and make substantive decisions with others? Will their work be interdependent? When it comes to real-world problem solving, we ask, does the learning activity require the solution of authentic, real-world problems? And will those solutions be implemented in the real world? If considering skilled communication, we reflect, will my learners communicate their thoughts and ideas on a concept or issue? And will that communication be supported with evidence and designed with a particular audience in mind? When contemplating self-regulation, is this activity long-term? And will my learners plan and monitor their own work as well as make revisions based on feedback or self-assessment? And finally, when evaluating ICT for learning, we ask, will ICT be necessary for learners in their knowledge construction? Will learners be designers of an ICT product for a real audience? Remember, you can focus on one skill or a few at a time. The decision is entirely yours when it comes to your learners' needs and your instructional goals.
So I'm going to quickly go over what it is to write the Microsoft Certified Educator exam. Somebody asked a question in Q&A about, is this better than MIEE? So Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert Applications. So MCE, the certification never expires. It's a global exam. Everybody in the world writes the same exam in the same kind of way. I wrote mine in 2019, and though they've refreshed with newer videos and refined the content, the framework is the same, so that my badge still applies. Once you've written it and passed with, and you need 70%, 700 out of the 1,000 points, you cannot do it again. You can't do it again to get a better mark. The only time it would become null and void is if they no longer supported or used the framework. They might replace it with a different exam, but that I don't think it's going away for a very long time. So unlike certain other qualifications, this does not expire. And certainly in our school, we do MCE the first year, and then from year 2, the teachers have to apply to be MIEs, because part of the MIEE program, the application, is you have to talk about a 21st century project where you've applied these rubrics. So they find it much easier if they've done this exam. Also, it definitely changed the narrative in our school. It changed the way we thought and looked at projects that we gave our students. Even just group projects became different. We do it from our grade R teachers to our matric teachers, from our intern teachers. Everybody does it, and it applies on every level of education as far as we're concerned. It is my favorite exam and certification, because I think it's the way we can use to change what we do and what schools do. So there is a frame, breakdown, a data sheet of the exam. Please don't be confused. The exam is called Technology Literacy for Educators. There is a very few questions, as you can see, that ask, but they're about big level questions about, as you could see, they talked about make code and Minecraft. You just really need to know what those in the big picture can do. So most often the rubrics, these are the rubrics they refer to. I suggest you print them out and you get very familiar with them. In order to take the exam, you have to go to Certiport and you have to create an account. You have to say you are an educator and you work in an educational institution when you create that account. And if you're writing the exam online with me, you need to know that username. It is not an email address, and your password, because it uses a secure browser and those will not auto fill in. So you need to have written them down somewhere before you write the exam. When you write the exam, I give you an exam ID. That's so I can keep track of the results, because I have to give back the results to Microsoft. That's not that they know your name. It's more that how many people wrote the exam and what the success rate was. You also have to pay for your exam, but that's where the sponsorship of Microsoft's vouchers come in, and you would type the voucher number in there, which I would give you. If you skip some of these pieces, it makes it quite tricky when we're writing the exam, because then the exam will think you haven't paid, and it will actually stop, and sometimes that means you have to reschedule when you're going to write. After doing this, you sit in a window where it says, it asks for the proctor, which is me, the like invigilator, and I put my username and password in. So if there's quite a few people writing in the same session online, it does take me a little while to get through everybody to put my username and password. However, your time actually only starts, each individual person's time starts when they click the start in their actual exam, which is after this process. As you've seen from some of the questions, they are drags and drops. And the bottom left, there's one. So you usually get 3 or 4 sets of questions. They come in any order. When you go leave a section, you cannot go back to it. Some are case studies, like the one in the bottom left, where there's a question and then they tell you all the pieces of the information, the students, the teaching environment, and if you go to the 21 CLD rubrics, they are there. Or they often give you yes or no, and the rubric, as you can see in the top left, is actually in the question. On the right, you can see the rubric is in the question, and then you have to select ABC. And in the bottom right, you can see this is one that had ICT resources, where there's a person needs help formatting something, and you need to know that's what Word would do or what PowerPoint would do or Teams. So it's a very high level of the packages. If you do the Learn 21 CLD course, for every learning dimension, there is a page that talk about the tools that support that learning dimension the best. But you don't need to know all the tools in any kind of depth. And these questions about the tools are only 2 or 3 at the very end. As soon as you've finished your exam, and it's very important, there's a blue button called close session that you don't use that. You keep in the bottom right saying, yes, I've finished my exam, because then your result gets uploaded and you immediately get your result for the exam. It is based, tells you per section. From the learning dimensions, you need 700 out of the 1,000, and whether you get 701 or you get 999, it's still a pass. Generally, if people have prepared for the exam, most years when I've done this at Brescia and most online courses, 98, 99% of teachers pass first time. But you do need to prepare. It is not just an exam that you can just write. Certainly not even particularly after just listening to me for an hour. You just need to go over it, but you don't have to rewrite the rubrics. If you go to learn, if you go to the learn profile, that is the code N8YLY4 that you need to redeem